미디어 심리학 12주 2차 시간을 시작하겠습니다. 챕터 12는 사회심리학입니다. 사회 영향은 사람들에 대한 통제입니다. 사회 영향, 소셜 인플루언스는 한 사람의 행동이 다른 사람에 의해서 통제되는 것입니다. 인간은 사람들로 하여금 사회 영향에 취약할 수밖에 없는 세 가지 기본적 욕구를 갖고 있습니다. 쾌락 추구 동기, 인정에 대한 동기, 정확성에 대한 동기입니다. 쾌락 추구 동기는 모든 동기 중에서 가장 기본적인 동기입니다. 보상과 처벌은 행동에 영향을 주지만 어떤 경우에는 역효과를 낳을 수도 있습니다. 미국의 한 주에서는 과속에 대한 처벌을 늘려서 큰 효과를 봤습니다. 특히 사고의 큰 원인을 차지하는 18세 이하의 운전자가 과속으로 걸렸을 때 면허정지 처분과 벌금과 교육을 받도록 했습니다. 더군다나 운전면허 시험을 다시 치르도록 했습니다. 이러한 사회적 통제의 결과로 18세 이하 운전자 사고 사망률이 3년 만에 거의 40%나 떨어졌습니다. 쾌락 추구 동기를 이용해서 수많은 젊은이들의 생명을 구한 것입니다. 인간은 안전, 생계, 단결 등을 타인에게 이전하며 다른 사람으로 하여금 우리를 좋아하고 수용하고 인정하도록 만들려고 하는 것에 강력하게 동기화되어 있습니다. 쾌락 추구 동기와 마찬가지로 인정 추구 동기 역시 사회 영향의 한 지렛대가 됩니다. 규범은 한 문화 구성원들에게 널리 공유되는 관리적인 행동 기준입니다. 규범적 영향은 다른 사람의 행동이 무엇이 적합한 행동인가에 대해 정보를 제공해 주기 때문에 이 정보가 사람의 행동에 영향을 주는 것입니다. 상호적 규범은 사람은 자신에게 이득을 준 사람에게는 그것을 되갚아야 한다는 불문율입니다. 문전박대 기법은 조금씩 서로 양보하는 방식을 사용해 행동에 영향을 주는 방법입니다. 전기요금의 납부 고지서를 만드는데도 규범을 활용할 수 있습니다. 이웃들은 744kW를 사용하는데 당신은 그보다 3배가 넘는 2304kW를 사용하고 있으니 전기 사용량을 줄이라는 규범을 지시하는 것입니다. 다음은 규범 중에서 공유를 실험하는 영상을 보도록 하겠습니다.
This one is a study in which young children are collaborating together. There are 4 rewards up on the apparatus, and when they pull, 3 of them go to one side and 1 goes to the other side. Almost all the time, 80-something% of the time, the child who gets the 3 hands 1 over to the child who got the 1, and they equalize the rewards. So when they're collaborating, even if by surprise the rewards come out unequally, the child will equalize. Now, importantly, in a control condition where they work separately, that same sense of fairness to divide them equally does not apply. So in this control condition, you're going to see they pull separately, and one of them gets 3 and one of them gets 1, and now they don't share because they didn't generate them collaboratively, and there doesn't seem to be any sense that we deserve equal shares the way there was in the first condition where they pulled together. So we have argued that whereas in many studies in the literature, young children appear selfish because they're in a experimental paradigm where the experimenter gives them some candies, for example, and says, share some with your friend. Then they don't really like to share very much. They have them in their hands, they've got their mind, I'm giving them up, and they're kind of reluctant and they tend to be selfish. But in this situation where the rewards are external, nobody owns them, and they generate them collaboratively, they are very, very egalitarian. And these are 3-year-olds, so this is at an age where young children are thought to be a bit on the selfish side. Again, we did this study with chimpanzees. Since chimpanzees don't really hand over food, we had to modify it so that they could, if they didn't act, the other individual could take some, and they would have to block them. They only sometimes allowed the other to reach in and get the food. They usually blocked them. But they didn't differentiate if they had generated the rewards together in a collaboration or if they had generated the rewards individually. It didn't matter. So they weren't taking collaboration into account when they divided the spoils, as it were. So that's what young children do below 3 years of age and below, where, again, it's about commitments to individuals, dividing things fairly with individuals. It is possible that children were doing this on the basis of some norms or rules they've learned from adults, but we don't think so. We have several lines of evidence that suggest to us that that's not the case, that they're doing it on the basis of individual relationships and being egalitarian with the partner or helping the partner, and not because of some cultural rules
다음은 사회적 규범을 강제하는 것에 대한 실험입니다.
that they've learned. So now the second step is this cultural step with norms. Young children will follow social norms quite early, but we don't think they're following them as social norms per se. So mom says to the child, do this or do that. That may be coming from mom's norms. The child's just responding to an individual imperative from the mother. They're doing it because the mother told them to, not because they see it as a general norm or rule of society that if you're in this group, here's how we do things. Now, when do children get this sort of we-based notion of norms? We have taken as evidence when they don't just follow norms, but they actually enforce them on others. What's the motivation behind correcting others when they're not following the norm? Some kind of group-based motivation to do things this way. So in this study, you'll see that the child has previously seen, before the film starts, how this game is played, and the game is called Daxing. And you'll see the puppet come, and the puppet will play the game not the same way that the child understands Daxing to be. The puppet is playing it wrong. And you'll see the child objecting and quite vociferously telling the child, no, it doesn't work like that. He's saying, no, it doesn't work like that at all. And he even glances to the original experimenter who, by instructions, is looking down and not responding. And he's saying, no, it doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that at all. And now he's going to teach. The child is going to take the tool that you're supposed to use, put it together, and give it to the puppet. And then he says, here, you take this. It goes like this. So the puppet, by not playing the game by the rules, is not hurting anyone. It's not disrupting the game. It's an individual game. But the child wants to see him doing it the right way. In addition to this study, in which the child is marking, the puppet is saying Daxing, we also have one where they just, on this table, you play this game, and on this table, you play it a different way. And the child also enforces that norm when the puppet plays the wrong game on the wrong table. So it's not just about language. Here's one other, just so you can get another version of it, of two children playing together. And what we have done is we taught one child one set of rules. They're told you put animals on animals. And another child is taught that you put colors on colors. And you'll see how they argue when they discover the other child doing it wrong. Okay, so here they go. And the first one is putting it on the wrong. He says, no, hedgehog on hedgehog. That's eagle on eagle in German. And the other child saying, no. And then the other one says, yes. And so they're having a quite emotional, involved argument about what's the right way to play the game. And you will see at one point he says, no, it works like this. Hedgehog with hedgehog, it works like this. And then he's going to say, this is the way it works. It goes like this. So it goes like this, right? He says to the other child. And then the first child leaves and says, I'm going to get the man, going to get the experimenter, because he's going to enforce the right. Tattling is an interesting variation on this, where it's not just the norm carrying the force, but let's go get the people who made up the norms. Let's go get the adults. So we think in ontogeny we've got the same, roughly same two steps we have hypothesized as being evolutionary steps in the evolution of human cooperation and morality. A second person morality where children help and share and not harm, of course, specific other individuals. They collaborate and share the spoils equitably with other individuals. And these we would call natural predispositions. They're not things learned from the culture or from adults specifically at this time. They have learned some things from adults, but we think they're mainly coming from their own natural predispositions to treat other people, by help other people and treat other people equally. And then only after 3 years old or so, They start with a norm-based morality where they are following social norms, both of a moral type and just a conventional type, like the game rules that you saw. They start enforcing social norms, and ultimately they internalize these into guilt and shame, and they begin to regulate their own behavior by the evaluative attitudes as expressed in social norms of adults and others in their culture. So, much more is needed. Our account of morality is very only simply expressed here. There's a lot more complexity, but we just hope that this two-step framework in both phylogeny and ontogeny will provide a context within which future research can help us to answer some of the outstanding questions.
사람들은 상호성 규범과 같은 익숙한 규범을 상기시켜서 우리에게 영향을 줍니다. 만약에 여러분이 해외여행을 가서 낯선 상황에 처했을 때 다른 사람들이 어떻게 하고 있는가를 살펴보고 있었다면 애매하고 혼동되고 처음 접하는 상황에서 다른 사람들이 새로운 규범을 정의해 줌으로써 당신에게 영향을 줄 수 있다는 것을 알게 될 것입니다. 동조, conformity는 단지 다른 사람들이 그것을 하고 있기 때문에 다른 사람들이 하는 행동을 따라하는 경향입니다. 애쉬는 동조에 대한 연구를 진행했습니다. 복종, obedience는 다른 이유 없이 권위자가 우리에게 어떤 것을 하라고 말하기 때문에 그것을 하는 것입니다. 밀그램은 복종에 대한 중요한 연구를 진행했습니다. 규범적 압력은 강력한 결과를 가져올 수 있습니다. 애쉬의 동조 연구에서 실험 참가자들은 오른쪽에 있는 선분 A, B, C 중에서 어떤 것이 왼쪽에 있는 기준 선분과 길이가 같은가라는 질문을 받았습니다. 실험 결과 실험 참가자의 대답은 방에 있는 사람들이 같은 질문에 어떻게 대답하는가에 따라서 달라졌습니다. 애쉬의 동조 실험에 대한 동영상을 보도록 하겠습니다.
The experiment you'll be taking part in today involves the perception of lengths of lines. As you can see here, I have a number of cards, and on each card there are several lines. Your task is a very simple one. You're to look at the line on the left and determine which of the three lines on the right is equal to it in length. All right, we'll proceed in this order. You'll give your answer.
Only one of the people in the group is a real subject, the fifth person with the white T-shirt. The others are confederates of the experimenter and have been told to give wrong answers on some of the trials. The experiment begins uneventfully as subjects give their judgments.
2, 2, 2, 2,
2,
3,
3,
3, 3,
But on the third trial, something happens.
2,
2,
2,
2,
2.
The subject denies the evidence of his own eyes and yields to group influence.
1,
Ash found subjects went along with the group on 37% of the critical trials. But he found through interviews that they went along with the group for different reasons.
1. 1. They must be right. There are 4 of them and 1 of me. 1.
This subject's yielding is based on a distortion of his judgment. He genuinely believes that the group is correct.
1. 1. 1. 2. 1. 2. 2. 2.
I know they're wrong, but why should I make waves?
2.
In this case, the subject knows he is right, but goes along to avoid the discomfort of disagreeing with the group. Here, the distortion is at the level of his response.
2. 2. 2. 2.
In the previous experiment, the naive subject stood alone against the group. In this variation, Ash gave the naive subject a partner, here seated in the third position, who also gives the correct response.
1.
1, 2,
1.
2.
With a partner, yielding drops to only 5% of the critical trials compared to 37% without a partner. Although subjects report warmth and good feeling toward the partner, they typically deny that he played a role in their own independence. The partnership variation shows that much of the power of the group came not merely from its numbers, but from the unanimity of its opposition. When that unanimity is punctured, the group's power is greatly reduced. Sometimes we go along with the group because what they say convinces us they are right. This is called informational conformity. But sometimes we conform because we are apprehensive that the group will disapprove if we are deviant. This is called normative conformity. The strength of the normative factor is shown in another variation carried out by Ash. In this variation, the subject is told that because he had arrived late, he would have to write his answers. Subjects in this private response experiment are exposed to the same amount of misleading information as other subjects, but they are immune from any possible criticism by the group.
One.
And this enormously reduces the pressure to conform. Conformity drops by 2/3. Ash's experiment is a classic. It reveals how people will deny what they see and submit to group pressure. It allows us not only to observe conformity, but to study the conditions that increase or reduce its occurrence.
우리가 권위에 대해서 복종하는 가장 큰 이유는 규범 때문입니다. 스탠리 밀그램은 자신의 실험에서 이를 증명해 보였습니다. 밀그램은 권위에 대한 복종을 연구하던 중에 사람들이 파괴적인 권위에 굴복하는 이유가 성격보다 규범과 상황에 있다고 믿고 설득력 있는 상황이 생기면 아무리 이성적 사람이라도 도덕적 규칙을 무시하고 명령에 따라서 잔혹한 행위를 저지를 수 있다고 생각했습니다. 밀그램은 학생 역할의 피실험자를 의자에 묶고 양쪽에 전기 충격 장치를 연결했습니다. 그리고 선생이 학생에게 문제를 내고 학생이 틀리면 선생이 학생에게 전기 충격을 가할 수 있도록 했습니다. 그러나 사실 학생 역할의 피실험자는 배우였으며 전기 충격 장치도 가짜였습니다. 밀그램이 주시했던 것은 선생들이 전압을 높여가는 과정에서 어떤 태도를 보이는가였습니다. 그는 고작 4.5달러의 대가로 선생들이 과연 15V에서 450V까지 전압을 높일 것인가에 대해서 관찰했습니다. 실험자는 흰색 가운을 입고 전압을 올려야 하는지 고민하는 사람들에게 실험의 모든 책임은 내가 진다며 전압을 올릴 것을 강요했습니다. 실험의 결과는 충격적으로 65%의 피실험자가 450V까지 전압을 올렸습니다. 이 실험은 필립 짐바르도의 스탠퍼드 감옥 실험까지 확대되었습니다. 밀그램의 실험과 관련된 동영상을 보도록 하겠습니다.
Under what conditions would a person obey authority who commanded actions that went against conscience? These are exactly the questions that I wanted to investigate at Yale University.
It is May 1962. An experiment is being conducted in the Elegant Interaction Laboratory at Yale University. The subjects are 40 males between the ages of 20 and 50 residing in the greater New Haven area.
Psychologists have developed several theories to explain how people learn. One theory is that people learn things correctly whenever they get punished for making a mistake.
40 years later, Milgram's infamous experiment, obedience, is still taught in classrooms around the world.
Would you open those and tell me which of you is which, please? Teacher. Learn. All right, now the next thing we'll have to do is set the learner up so that he can get some sort of punishment.
What inspired Milgram, I would say there were a number of factors. One of them is he was very ambitious. He wanted to make a mark in social psychology. And he wanted, as he wrote to one friend, he wanted to come up with the boldest experiment that he could think of.
Would you roll up your right sleeve, please? This electrode is connected to the shock generator in the next room. And this electrode paste is to provide a good contact to avoid any blister or burn. Do you have any questions now before we go into the next room?
About 2 years ago, I was at the Veterans Hospital in West Haven. And while there, they detected a heart condition. There's nothing serious, but as long as I'm having these shocks, how strong are they? How dangerous are they?
Well, no, although they may be painful, they're not dangerous. Anything else?
No, that's all.
All right, teacher, would you take the test and be seated in front of the shock generator, please, in the next room?
But the experiment was rigged.
The victim was an accomplice of the experimenter. The victim, according to plan, provided many wrong answers. His verbal responses were standardized on tape, and each protest was coordinated to a particular voltage level on the shock generator.
Now, as teacher, you were seated in front of this impressive-looking instrument, the shock generator. Its essential feature is a line of switches that goes from 15 volts to 450 volts, and a set of verbal designations that goes from slight shock to moderate shock, strong shock, very strong shock, intense shock, extreme intensity shock, and finally XXX, danger severe shock. Your job, the experimenter explains to you, is to teach the learner a simple word pair test. If he gets each answer correctly, fine, you move on to the next pair. But if he makes a mistake, you are instructed to give him an electric shock, starting with 15 volts, and you increase the shock 1 step on each error.
Incorrect. You'll now get a shock of 105 volts. Hard hit. Just how far can you go on this thing? As far as is necessary. What do you mean, as far as is necessary? To complete the test.
Milgram was very much aware that obedience is a necessary ingredient for society to function. But he focused on the darker side of obedience.
Incorrect. 150 volts. Sad face.
Wait a minute. That's all. Get me out of here. I told you I had heart trouble. My heart's starting to bother me now.
It's absolutely essential that you continue. You got no other choice, teacher.
Oh, I have a lot of choices. My number one choice is that I wouldn't go on if I thought he was being harmed.
Now, this man makes disobedience seem a very rational and simple deed. Now, other subjects respond quite differently to the experimenter's authority.
Wrong. It's hair. 75 volts, Jim.
You don't know. Please continue.
Some psychologists were troubled by the ethics of it. Many, if not most, subjects found it a highly stressful, conflicted experience. People are stammering, stuttering, laughing hysterically, inappropriately.
150 volts.
Experimenter, that's all. Get me out of here. I told you I had heart trouble. My heart's starting to bother me now. Get me out of here, please. Let me out of here. You have no right to keep me here. Let me out. Let me out of here. Let me out.
Continue, please.
Let me out of here. My heart's bothering me. Let
Go
me
on.
out. Let me out.
Clearly, when we say people went to the top of the shock board, it wasn't like they were going blithely, sadistically. People went stop and go, stop and go. They were in a state of conflict, which created a tremendous amount of stress. So that was the main critique.
This will be at 3:30.
As his voice began to show increasing frustration, so did I. And I was really in a state of real conflict and agitation. One of Stanley Milgram's basic contributions was that you don't ask people what they would do given this hypothetical situation. You put them in the situation.
Wrong. I'm up to 180 volts. Please continue, teacher. 180 volts.
I can't stand the pain. Let me out of here.
Can't stand it. I'm not going to kill that man today.
According to Milgram, one of the things that's a prerequisite for carrying out acts that are evil is to shed responsibility from your shoulders and hand it over to the person in charge.
I mean, who's going to take the responsibility if anything happens to that gentleman? I'm responsible for anything that happens here. Continue, please. All right, next one, slow.
He didn't hold any gun to anybody's head. Just the fact that he conveyed a sense of authority. Roughly 60-65% of the people went all the way to the top of the shock board.
450 volts. That's it. Now continue using the last switch on the board, please. The 450 switch for each wrong answer. Continue, please. I'm not getting no answer. Don't the man's health mean anything? Whether the learner likes it or not, we must... But he might be dead in there.
Milgram made the point, I think very effectively, that the Nazis weren't all a bunch of psychopaths at Belsen and Dachau, that you could staff a death camp from the middle class in New Haven.
Well, who was actually pushing the switch?
I was. But he kept insisting. I told him no, but he said he's got to keep going.
What kind of obedience would Milgram get today if he were to do the experiment today?
Probably about the same.
Probably about the same. Why?
I don't know. I think people are just inherently obedient.
It just really shows like how far human beings will go to appease what they perceive to be an authority figure.
Milgram has identified one of the constants, one of the universals of social behavior. The readiness to obey authority cuts across time. It's a constant. The other outstanding and distinctive thing about the obedience experiment is how much it has and keeps on permeating contemporary culture and thought. It's still with us in very, very important ways.